In the vibrant glow of a seaside diner along the bustling coast, neon signs flickered against the evening haze, casting colorful reflections on the wet pavement from a recent drizzle that left the air fresh and tinged with the salty scent of the ocean nearby, while the hum of conversation and the sizzle of grills created a comforting backdrop for locals and travelers alike, a place where simple meals bridged the gap between daily routines and quiet escapes from the demands of life, offering a momentary respite in a world that often moved too fast for reflection. Zara Williams walked through the door with a measured stride, her 2-year-old frame carrying the invisible weight of missions completed in distant lands far from home. A black woman in the Navy's elite operations unit who had just returned from a grueling 20-month stint in harsh terrains overseas where the sun beat down mercilessly during the day and the nights were filled with the sounds of unfamiliar wildlife and the constant need for alertness, environments that had tested her physical and mental limits in ways that few could imagine. From leading reconnaissance teams through rugged mountains where every step could trigger hidden dangers to coordinating extractions in urban areas teeming with uncertainty, her role demanding not only strength but also quick thinking and unwavering composure under pressure. Out there, she had led teams through operations that demanded precision, endurance, and an unyielding focus on the objectives at hand, moments where a single misstep could compromise the entire group or alter the course of their assignment. But now, for the first time in what felt like an eternity of constant readiness and high-stakes decisions, she craved the ordinary, a chance to blend into the crowd without the burden of vigilance that had become second nature, allowing her to savor the small joys that civilian life offered, like the warmth of a familiar setting or the taste of food prepared with care rather than necessity. She chose this modest diner on a whim, its faded blue awning and steamed windows, promising familiarity and a sense of normalcy that she had longed for during those long months away. The aroma of fresh burgers and fries wafting out like a warm invitation that stirred memories of simpler times, a spot she remembered from brief leaves before deployments when she would stop in for a quick bite and a moment to recharge, where the world felt a bit less chaotic and more grounded in the everyday rhythms that grounded her spirit. The bell above the door jingled softly as she entered, a cheerful sound that contrasted with the weight she carried inside, the interior alive with the clatter of cutlery against plates and the murmur of patrons engaged in lively discussions, booths filled with families sharing stories of their day, couples leaning close over milkshakes and sharing quiet laughs, and solo diners lost in their thoughts or scrolling through their devices, a scene so removed from the high-stakes environments she knew tense briefings in dimly lit tents, the crackle of radios relaying critical updates, or the silence of waiting in ambush that it almost felt surreal, like stepping into a different reality where threats were minimal and relaxation was possible. Zara exchanged a nod with the hostess, a friendly woman with a welcoming smile who directed her to an available spot, then selected a booth in the back corner without hesitation, her training instinctively guiding her to a position with a full view of the room and the exit in clear sight, never turning her back to potential unknowns or blind spots that could compromise her awareness, a habit etched deep from years of service where situational awareness was the difference between safety and peril. She slid into the seat, the vinyl creaking under her weight in a familiar way that brought a small sense of comfort, and shrugged off her light jacket to reveal a casual blouse and jeans, nothing flashy or attention-drawing, just comfortable attire that let her feel human again, free from the heavy gear like vests and utility belts that had been her constant companions, allowing her to shed the layers of her professional identity for a brief interlude. Her eyes, sharp and observant as ever, scanned the space out of reflex, noting the layout with its checkered floors and retro decor, the faces of those around her, a mix of ages and backgrounds enjoying their evenings, the movements of the staff as they navigated the floor with practiced ease, all details that her mind catalogued automatically, a skill honed from countless hours in training simulations and real-world scenarios where overlooking something small could lead to big consequences. She ordered a classic cheeseburger with onion rings, the kind of meal that grounded her with its hearty flavors and simplicity, a far cry from the ration packs and makeshift meals in the field that prioritized nutrition over enjoyment. And as she waited, she allowed herself to relax just a bit, sipping iced tea from a condensation-beaded glass and letting the din wash over her like a soothing wave that eased the tension from her shoulders. But even in this haven of normalcy, her senses remained attuned to the environment, picking up on subtle shifts in the atmosphere, like the boisterous laughter from a table near the counter, where 3 men in casual button-downs sat, their voices rising above the rest with an edge that hinted at overindulgence, empty bottles accumulating on their table as their gestures grew more animated and less restrained, drawing occasional glances from others. They appeared in their mid-30s, confident types with polished watches gleaming under the lights and easy smiles that bordered on smirks, perhaps coming from a nearby office happy hour or a casual gathering that had extended into the evening, exuding an air of entitlement that made the air around them feel thicker and less inviting, their presence subtly altering the diner's vibe from relaxed to watchful. Zara noted their crude jokes aimed at passing servers, the way they leered at women dining alone with comments that crossed into discomfort. But she pushed it aside at first, reminding herself this was civilian life, not a mission requiring immediate intervention or escalation, focusing instead on the warmth of her arriving meal and the simple pleasure of eating without haste. Yet, as her food arrived, steaming and inviting with its golden bun and crispy sides, she couldn't ignore the escalation, their comments turning pointed and intrusive, targeting a young pair at a nearby booth, a slim guy and his partner, both in their early 20s, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the men's taunts grew bolder and more direct, their laughter booming in a way that drowned out nearby conversations. Zara's grip on her fork tightened slightly, a subtle sign of her growing alertness, her mind flashing to similar scenes overseas where silence enabled worse outcomes and allowed tensions to build unchecked. But she breathed steadily, focusing on her meal while keeping the group in her peripheral vision, assessing their movements and intent without drawing attention to herself. The young woman's eyes darted around the room, meeting Zara's briefly in what seemed like a silent plea for reassurance, her shoulders hunched protectively as the tall man leaned in closer from his seat, his words turning from jest to demand with a tone that carried across the space, the air thickening with potential conflict as the other two encouraged him with nods and chuckles. Zara's internal alarm bells rang softly at first, then louder as the men's behavior crossed from annoying to invasive, one of them staggering over to hover near the couple's booth, his presence intrusive and threatening in a way that made the young man shift uneasily, trying to interpose himself while avoiding direct confrontation. She set her utensils down deliberately, her body tensing imperceptibly as she evaluated the situation, the men's inebriated state making them unpredictable, the lack of intervention from others creating a vacuum that could lead to harm, the same drive that had seen her through deployments where hesitation cost lives now stirring within her, compelling her to act if the line was crossed further. The diner's ordinary night on the brink of transformation hung in the balance, the casual chatter fading into a tense hush as more patrons noticed the unfolding scene, some exchanging worried looks while others pretended not to see, the manager hovering uncertainly near the kitchen door, his hand inching toward his phone as if debating whether to involve authorities or hope it diffused on its own. Zara's experiences had taught her the value of timing, waiting for the right moment to engage without escalating prematurely, but also the cost of inaction when vulnerability was exploited, her resolve hardening as the tall man's hand reached out toward the young woman, a gesture that crossed into physical territory, prompting her to rise quietly from her booth, her movements fluid and controlled like those practiced in drills for urban operations. She stepped toward the fray with the poise of someone who had faced far worse adversaries in far more hostile settings, her voice cutting through the noise like a command in the field, steady and authoritative without being loud. "That's enough now. Let them be and back off," the words hanging in the air as the men turned toward her, surprise flickering across their faces before morphing into derision. The tall one sneering as he sized her up with a dismissive glance, his laughter echoing mockingly in the suddenly quieter space, unaware that they had just provoked a force honed in the crucibles of elite service where precision met purpose. The skinny companion chuckled, waving her off with a sloppy gesture. "Mind your own, lady. This doesn't concern you." His words slurred but laced with challenge, while the stocky one leaned back with a grin, adding fuel with a nod, the trio's overconfidence blinding them to the shift in dynamics. Zara stood firm, her stance balanced and ready, repeating her directive with calm insistence. "I said back off. You're making everyone uncomfortable and it's time to stop," her eyes locking onto theirs with an intensity that began to unsettle the tall leader, though he masked it with bravado, stepping closer in an attempt to intimidate. The young couple watched wide-eyed, hope flickering in their expressions as the diner's patrons held their collective breath, sensing the tipping point, the manager finally dialing for help in the background, while servers paused mid-step, the ordinary evening teetering on the edge of something extraordinary as Zara prepared for whatever came next, her training kicking in fully now, every sense heightened in the familiar way that had saved her and others countless times before. The confrontation built like a gathering storm, the men's laughter fading into growls as they closed in, the tall one reaching out to push her aside, his movement the spark that ignited her response. But in that instant, the room's energy shifted irrevocably, the bystanders' whispers turning to gasps as the scene unfolded in a blur of motion that would leave an indelible mark on all who witnessed it, the diner's walls echoing with the weight of what was about to transpire in a matter of seconds. From the vantage of the elderly couple in the corner booth, nestled against the diner's retro wallpaper with its faded patterns of sailboats and lighthouses that evoked nostalgic seaside memories, the cozy ambience shattered like fragile glass when the three men's laughter turned predatory and invasive, their table becoming a focal point of discomfort that rippled outward through the room, drawing uneasy shifts from nearby families who whispered concerns to each other about the escalating volume, but averted their eyes to avoid drawing unwanted attention, the young server biting her lip in visible frustration as she dodged their outstretched hands with trays balanced precariously, her steps quickening to escape the orbit of their table where empty glasses clinked ominously. The perspective shifted to the manager behind the counter, his apron stained with the day's spills and his phone in hand, as he debated internally whether to call authorities or hope the situation de-escalated on its own, sweat beading on his brow, while monitoring the escalating taunts aimed at the young duo in the adjacent booth, the woman's face paling under the fluorescent lights as the tall aggressor loomed larger with each mocking word, his companions cheering like spectators at a misguided show that no one else found entertaining, their gestures growing wilder and more uninhibited. Through the eyes of the young man at the targeted table, fear knotted his stomach into tight coils as he shielded his partner with a protective arm, his voice cracking in a plea for them to stop that barely carried over the din, the room's silence amplifying his isolation and helplessness until a calm figure approached from the back, her presence a sudden anchor in the swirling chaos that made him blink in surprise, wondering who this stranger was to step into the fray. Zara's intervention drew collective breaths from the onlookers. The skinny man's shove met with her swift deflection that twisted his arm in a blur of motion, sending him sprawling onto the checkered floor with a thud that echoed off the walls, gasps escaping from a mother covering her child's eyes to shield them from the sudden flurry, the stocky one charging next with a bellow that rattled nearby silverware, his momentum redirected effortlessly into a heap by the door, as patrons recoiled in shock, chairs scraping back in unison as people created distance. The tall leader's wild swing missed by mere inches, his fist cutting through the air with sloppy force, only for Zara's precise strike to his pressure point to crumple him amid clattering dishes and spilling condiments. The diner's floor now a tableau of stunned bodies writhing in confusion, whispers evolving into murmurs of awe from the silver-haired veteran nodding approval with a knowing glint in his eye, his wife clutching his arm in disbelief at the speed and efficiency of it all, her knitting forgotten on the table. The young woman's tears flowed freely as she clung to her boyfriend, their gratitude palpable in the way they locked eyes with Zara, words of thanks tumbling out in fragmented sentences while the manager exhaled a long-held breath of relief, finally setting down his phone as the immediate danger passed, phones emerging from pockets and purses to capture the aftermath in shaky videos that would soon light up social feeds. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as blue lights pierced the windows and danced across the countertops. Officers bursting in with authoritative strides that commanded the space, the lead detective surveying the disarray overturned furniture, scattering menus and napkins, scattered food creating slippery hazards underfoot, three disheveled figures accusing wildly from their positions on the ground, their voices overlapping in frantic denial that painted Zara as the instigator without a shred of context. Witnesses surged forward in a wave of solidarity, the veteran recounting the harassment with military precision that lent credibility to his words, detailing each taunt and grab as if briefing a superior, the mother adding her account of the fear it instilled in her family, her voice steady despite the adrenaline, the couple displaying bruises on the woman's arm as tangible evidence of the ordeal, their stories weaving a tapestry of truth that systematically dismantled the men's lies and excuses, layer by layer exposing the sequence of events. Cameras rolled from bystanders' devices, capturing not just the fallen trio but the collective resolve of the room, the manager offering surveillance feeds from overhead angles that replayed the sequence in damning clarity on a small screen, the officers' expressions hardening as they watched the build-up, the shoves, the swift countermeasures. Handcuffs clicking into place with a metallic finality that silenced the protests, the trio's voices fading under the weight of consensus and proof as they were helped to their feet and led toward the door. Zara stood aside during the questioning, her statement brief and factual without embellishment, recounting the warnings given and the minimal actions taken in response to the threats, the detective's gaze lingering with intrigue at her unflappable demeanor that hinted at deeper experience, a subtle nod acknowledging the handled situation before turning back to paperwork. The room's applause built gradually, starting with a clap from the veteran that spread like a contagion, patrons approaching Zara with handshakes and thanks that conveyed a mix of relief and admiration, a father lifting his daughter onto his shoulders to see the brave lady who had turned the tide, her small wave eliciting smiles amid the cleanup of spilled items. The young pair embraced Zara briefly, words tumbling in appreciation for the intervention that had spared them further distress, their bond visibly strengthened in the aftermath. While servers offered free desserts and refills in gesture of solidarity, the manager declaring her meal comped along with an invitation to return any time, the atmosphere shifting from fear to celebration as stories were exchanged among tables, laughter returning in tentative bursts. As the police wrapped up their notes and departed with the detained men in tow, questions lingered in hushed tones among the remaining crowd, her moves too precise and efficient for a civilian, whispers speculating on her background while respecting the privacy. She maintained the diner's patrons dispersing gradually with stories to tell friends and family, the night etching itself into memory from varied angles that highlighted different facets of the event, each viewpoint adding layers to the tale of unexpected resolve and the quiet power that had restored order in a matter of moments. The elderly couple reflected on the scene as they paid their bill, the husband murmuring about times when such stands were rarer, his wife agreeing with a thoughtful nod, the manager tallying the evening's events for his report while breathing easier, the young man and woman lingering to exchange contact info with Zara in case of follow-up, their evening salvaged from ruin into a story of triumph. Bystanders outside peered through the windows, drawn by the lights and commotion, their curiosity piqued as snippets of conversation drifted out, the diner's usual rhythm resuming with the clink of clean dishes and the hum of the grill firing up again. But underneath it all, an undercurrent of empowerment lingered, patrons leaving with a renewed sense of community and the possibility that one person's actions could indeed make a profound difference in the face of adversity. The veteran's salute to Zara as he exited was a silent tribute to her unseen skills, echoed in the mother's quiet thanks for modeling strength to her children. The room's energy transformed from tense to invigorated, conversations buzzing about the what-ifs and the relief that someone had stepped up when it mattered most. Servers shared relieved glances as they reset tables, the manager posting a quick note on the door about closing early for cleanup, but with a promise of normal hours tomorrow, the young couple walking out hand in hand with heads held higher, their ordeal turning into a bonding experience thanks to the intervention. As the last lights dimmed and the neon sign flickered off, the echoes of the storm subsided into tales that would be retold in homes and workplaces, each retelling colored by personal perspectives that enriched the narrative, from the fear of the moment to the awe of the resolution, ensuring the night's events lived on in collective memory as a testament to quiet heroism in unexpected places. The diner's walls, if they could speak, would recount the multiplicity of views, the child's wide-eyed wonder, the family's protective huddle, the solo diner's silent observation, all converging on the pivotal figure who had navigated the turmoil with grace and effectiveness, leaving an indelible mark on those who bore witness to the unfolding drama. In the wake of the diner's upheaval that had captured hearts and screens across the nation, media outlets buzzed with footage that spread like digital wildfire through countless shares and reposts, headlines framing Zara as an enigmatic force of quiet determination whose actions sparked endless discussions on personal agency and communal responsibility, analysts dissecting her techniques on national broadcasts with frame-by-frame breakdowns that highlighted the efficiency of her responses without glorifying confrontation, former service members speculating on her elite background in interviews where they praised the discipline evident in her choices, her name emerging as a symbol in online discussions that celebrated her poise and sparked thoughtful debates on the ethics of intervention in public spaces, encouraging viewers to consider how small acts of awareness could prevent larger issues. Community groups rallied around the narrative, women's centers hosting workshops inspired by her stand that focused on building confidence through practical skills like de-escalation techniques and situational awareness, enrollment in defense classes spiking dramatically as young attendees cited her as their primary motivation for signing up, sharing stories of how the event empowered them to feel more secure in everyday environments like cafes or parks. Zara navigated the unexpected spotlight with quiet resolve and a focus on positive outcomes, accepting select invitations to speak at forums where she emphasized collective responsibility and the importance of fostering supportive networks, her words resonating in auditoriums filled with aspiring leaders from diverse backgrounds who hung on every insight about turning moments of challenge into opportunities for growth, parents sharing her tale at dinner tables to instill values of empathy and proactive kindness in their children, creating family dialogues that extended the story's reach into homes far and wide. Corporations revised conduct policies in response to the widespread attention, citing the men's downfall as a clear warning about the repercussions of unchecked behavior in shared spaces, their former employers issuing statements on zero-tolerance stances that led to broader industry audits aimed at promoting inclusive cultures and respectful interactions, while the diner itself transformed into a landmark of sorts, visitors flocking not just for its hearty meals but to sit in the booth where the event unfolded, leaving notes of solidarity on a community board that the manager compiled into a wall of inspiration filled with messages of thanks and reflections on unity. Legal proceedings unfolded swiftly and transparently, the trio's defenses crumbling under the scrutiny of video evidence and a chorus of testimonies from those present, their sentences including service hours that placed them in community centers where they contributed to programs on positive communication and respect, their reputations tarnished in professional circles where opportunities closed permanently as colleagues distanced themselves from the association. Zara's command commended her discretion in handling the matter off-duty. A brief meeting with superiors affirming that her actions aligned perfectly with core values of protection and integrity, her humility shining through in interviews where she redirected praise toward the importance of community vigilance, drawing admiration from figures in advocacy who partnered with her for programs empowering marginalized voices through education and resources. Schools integrated her narrative into curricula on social studies and ethics, students role-playing scenarios to build confidence and empathy in group settings, while nonprofits raised funds in her honor for victim support initiatives that provided counseling and training to those affected by similar experiences, her influence extending to policy talks where lawmakers referenced the incident, in pushes for stricter guidelines on public safety and harassment prevention in establishments like restaurants and bars. Through it all, Zara reflected in private moments away from the public eye, journaling lessons from the event that reinforced her commitment to service beyond the uniform she wore, exploring how such experiences could inform broader efforts in mentoring youth or supporting veteran transitions. Her family gatherings warmed by pride as relatives shared clippings and messages of support, friends organizing quiet celebrations of her impact with gatherings that focused on gratitude rather than fanfare. The young couple channeled their experience into activism with renewed purpose, speaking at events alongside Zara where they highlighted the transformative power of solidarity, their bond strengthened by the ordeal as they pursued joint projects like awareness campaigns in local schools, inspiring peers to form support networks that fostered open conversations about standing up for one another. As months passed without dimming the story's resonance, awards trickled in from community organizations and media outlets, honors for courage and leadership that Zara accepted graciously, donating any associated proceeds to veteran causes and scholarships for underrepresented youth pursuing careers in public service, her legacy manifesting in subtle yet profound shifts. Safer public spaces through increased awareness programs, empowered individuals taking proactive steps in their communities, a cultural nudge toward accountability that encouraged everyday people to speak up when witnessing discomfort. In a reflective keynote at a national conference on empowerment, she shared visions of a world where strength lies in unity and mutual respect, weaving in anecdotes about the value of preparation and compassion without dwelling on the past, the applause affirming her role as a catalyst for change that extended far beyond one evening's events. Community leaders cited her as an example in training sessions for first responders, emphasizing the blend of skill and restraint she demonstrated, while online platforms hosted forums where participants discussed adapting her principles to digital interactions, promoting kinder online environments. Zara's days filled with purposeful activities, from volunteering at local shelters to collaborating on educational materials for self-advocacy, each endeavor building on the foundation of that pivotal night without repeating its details, her influence quietly expanding through partnerships that amplified voices often overlooked. The diner's manager reported increased patronage from those drawn to the positive story, turning the space into a hub for community events like discussion nights on safety and respect, the wall of notes growing into a digital archive shared online to inspire globally. Lawmakers in various regions proposed bills inspired by the widespread dialogue, aiming to enhance protections in public venues with clearer guidelines for staff intervention and patron rights. Zara's input sought in advisory roles where her expertise informed practical implementations. Family members noted her subtle growth, a deeper sense of connection to civilian life that balanced her service experiences, gatherings evolving into platforms for sharing aspirations influenced by her example. The young woman's participation in self-defense workshops became a regular commitment, her confidence blooming as she mentored others, crediting Zara for igniting that spark. Nonprofits expanded their reach with grants tied to the story's momentum, funding initiatives for youth empowerment in underserved areas. Zara's endorsements lending credibility that attracted donors. In quieter reflections during evening walks along the coast, Zara pondered the interconnectedness of actions and outcomes, her journal entries exploring themes of resilience and hope that she shared in select writings, contributing to books on leadership without seeking authorship credit. The veteran's continued advocacy in local groups highlighted her as a modern exemplar of duty, his stories at meetings inspiring new generations to consider service paths. As the narrative wove into cultural fabric, media retrospectives revisited the impact with fresh interviews from witnesses, each adding new layers of appreciation for the ripple effects on personal growth and societal norms. Zara's humility remained a constant, deflecting personal acclaim toward collective progress. Her days a blend of routine and meaningful engagements that honored the event's lessons in forward-looking ways. Community art projects emerged, murals depicting themes of unity inspired by her stand, adorning public spaces as reminders of shared strength. Educational apps developed scenarios based on similar situations, users practicing responses in virtual settings to build real-world confidence. The stocky man's former colleagues initiated internal reviews, fostering workplaces that prioritized ethical training and inclusivity. Zara's collaborations with educators led to curricula updates, integrating modules on empathy and action in school programs nationwide. The silver-haired couple's letters of thanks evolved into ongoing correspondence, sharing how the night renewed their faith in human kindness. Nonprofits reported increased volunteer sign-ups, attributing the surge to the story's motivational pull. In advisory sessions with policymakers, Zara advocated for resources in mental health support for those involved in public incidents, drawing from her own balanced approach. Family traditions adapted, with gatherings including discussions on community involvement, inspired by her example. The young man's career shift toward advocacy roles reflected the profound change, his speeches echoing gratitude for the turning point. As seasons changed, the diner's anniversary event celebrated the positive legacy, inviting Zara as a guest of honor where she spoke on building resilient communities. Media specials explored broader implications, featuring experts on social dynamics who credited the event with shifting conversations toward proactive empathy. Zara's journaling practice turned into a personal tool for others through shared anonymized excerpts in support groups, aiding in processing experiences. The mother's family implemented home lessons on standing up, crediting the night for sparking family values talks. Veteran organizations honored Zara with quiet recognitions, her peers toasting to her embodiment of service principles in civilian contexts. The narrative's evolution into inspirational content like podcasts and documentaries kept the focus on growth, avoiding sensationalism in favor of meaningful insights. Zara's quiet evenings by the sea became moments of gratitude, reflecting on how one decision amplified into waves of positive change, her path forward illuminated by the connections forged in its wake.